Hello friends, Tanya here for Trinity Stamps, and today we're going to have some garden vibes. I'm pulling out a couple of the new stamp sets that came out in June. This one is the Rooting for You Stamp and Die Set. It's one stamp and one die, and as you can see here, I've colored these already and I have it all lined up, ready to cut out. I did not color this on video, but I do have all of the Copic color markers for the coloring that I did, and I did some blending and some flicking to get the looks that I got on this image. I did die cut an extra piece, and now we're going to take the Slimline Woodsy background stamp, which is designed to do a slimline card, but I'm going to make a 5x7 card. I have a 5x7 piece of cardstock here, and as you can see, I lined up the stamp at the 2.5 inch mark inside of this original size Misty. This way we can do half of the cardstock in one impression and the other half with the other impression just by flipping the cardstock around. And I'll show you what I mean. Look at that. One swipe. Now we will ink up our stamp again after I rotate the cardstock 180 degrees and stamp it again. And then we have a complete panel with this wood grain background covering the entire piece. We're going to use the Modern Embossed Edge A7 stack here and take the fourth from the largest size to die cut a panel from that wood grain cardstock, and I did center that nicely, so if I wanted to I could use the leftover as a frame on another card. We're going to adhere this directly to a white heavyweight white cardstock 5x7 card base, and you can see that there's a nice wide white border. That was what I was looking for this. And then we're going to adhere the colored image to the extra piece of cardstock to add a little height and dimension. And then we'll glue that directly to the card base. Sorry if you heard my dog barking. From inside. She was outside. Who knows what she went to go find? Maybe a deer. Next, we're going to take some embellishments. I'm trying to choose between the Golden Glass and the Gold Star embellishment mixes. And I decided to go with the stars. They are more flat. It's basically like a confetti sequin, and they are so shimmery. I just love them. I didn't have them until about maybe a month ago. They are beautiful. And this is my first time using them. I just scattered them across the front of the card, and I'm adhering them with my Barely Art Precision Glue and using my pickup stick to help adhere them easily. Next, we're going to pull out the Simply Sentimental U Stamp and Die Set, and we're going to choose the U that has a solid background shadow. I also pulled out an ombre ink pad from Hero Arts, and this one is the red ombre, and I stamped this out. Now I had to rehydrate my ink pads recently, so this one didn't stamp as crisply as it could have the first time I did it. I did end up stamping it 3 times before I got it the right crispness for my likes. We also are going to use one of the sub-sentiments from this stamp set, so it's going to read, "You are my favorite person." So I'm going to take the shadow die and the sub-sentiment die and cut those out, and then we'll glue those inside the card. I prefer to do it this way so that if I mess it up, it is not on the actual finished card, and I can completely line this up and have the best inking without having to risk the card base. That lined up very easily, and because I used some VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink, I did not want to smear it. I had not let it sit for very long, so it could have smeared yet. And now I'm adding some more of those gold stars on the inside. Since they are nice and flat, they will adhere on the inside and not cause any more bulk. In fact, they're less bulky than the die cut sentiments that I put on the inside. Next, we're going to make a tag. I took the I really appreciate your kindness. It's a peachy one. And I'm stamping it with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink on some white cardstock, and I'm going to heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder. Now I have several kinds of clear embossing powder in this bin. This is simply I kind of use it as a fixative for whenever I'm doing this kind of stamping. When I'm going to do heat embossing, something that I just want to make that ink sealed in and not smearable, and so that it creates wells for when you're watercoloring. This is just plain 80-pound Hammermill white cardstock. It is not watercolor cardstock, but I'm going to use some watercolors on it anyway. I'm using an aqua pen or a water brush with the well of water on the inside of it, and we're going to very lightly watercolor. When I say lightly, I mean we're not using much water at all. And what results is a kind of velvety texture or appearance to the watercoloring when it dries. It looks solid and smooth when you first apply it, but as it dries and absorbs into the paper, it creates kind of a velvety feel to it. I did use two different orangey peach colors here, one lighter than the other, and I'm going to blend this in with, or blend the darker one a little bit with the lighter color. I'm cleaning my brush on on my rag that I use to clean my stamps and my work surface, and I switch to a green, and then I pick up a little bit of red and color that heart. Ultimately, I didn't use the heart, and to add a little extra specialness to this, I'm going to rehydrate some liquid pixie dust that's in my palette and apply that to the main body of the peaches. After this dries nicely, I did take out the coordinating dies and die cut the peach, and you'll see that that went quite smoothly. Next, I'm taking some scrap pieces of cardstock because I want the different pieces of the sentiment to be different colors. So I've got a white piece that I'm heat embossing with the black black ink and clear embossing powder. Then I found a light peach colored cardstock, and I'm going to stamp that again with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I'm going to use the same ink on all of these different sections, and I'm going to add the clear embossing powder to that also. And one more time I'm going to stamp using a darker peach or orange color. And these were all just pulled from my file of rainbow scraps, which is pretty handy, I must say. I used to have 6 file folders separating my my cardstock scraps into specific colors, but I have graduated to just one big file folder holding all of my rainbow scraps, and I find that I use them a whole lot more. It really works well for me. Here we are just heat setting all of those sentiments, and we'll use the coordinating dies and get those all put in place. I love that this stamp and die set has everything separated out, so you can use just the pieces that you want. Now, fair warning, you can't actually get all of these pieces perfectly die cut from the same image. So if you want to die cut all of these pieces, you will need to stamp this image more than once. The image is one solid piece. The dies are several pieces, but that's okay. We get lots more versatility this way. Here you can see that the sentiments are actually quite intricate, and the peaches cut out beautifully. I really like how this turned out. We're going to take another piece of cardstock. This one is about 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and we're going to adhere that inside, just tack it down with a little bit of dot temporary adhesive to the inside of our MISTI, and use the same craft colored ink on some craft cardstock and use that wood grain again. And then I'm going to pull out, I decided I needed this inking to be a little more solid. There was like a line across my image where my ink pad edge had been. And then we're going to actually dry this with my heat tool because with all of that ink, it's pretty wet. I'm going to use the Trinity Stamps Slimline Tags dies and cut out two, one with a heavyweight white cardstock to be a backer for this one, and one from the wood grain that we created, and we'll adhere those back to back. My cutting pads are so beat up, they always leave marks on the back of my cardstock, and I wanted to cover that and make this a nice sturdy tag. Now I am laying out all of the different components that we have stamped, colored, die cut, and we're going to create this tag. I think that this really brings the feeling of late summer, roadside stands, gardens, farmers markets, all of those fun feelings. I know I love a good farmers market. I don't often have the opportunity to buy fruits and vegetables from roadside stands because that's not really a thing in Minnesota. Our growing season is so short. Farmers markets, though, those are something that you will see, especially in bigger communities. I remember going to the farmers market in our small town, and that was pretty fun too. Next, we're going to use these little jelly hearts. These are the Peachy Keen, and again, they are frosted and translucent. So I'm going to take 3 of those and add those where that one single heart stamp would have been. I think this is a little more fun with the way I've stretched out our images. That is all of the embellishing. Next, we're going to add some twine from my stash. I have an entire drawer full of different colors and textures and weights of twine. That's what happens when you've been crafting for 20 plus years. You develop quite a stash. Actually, it's been 15 plus years, but who's counting? I'm going to tie a knot at the top of the tag, and then I'll leave the ends loose so that I can tie it around whatever it is I decide to create with. That's both of the projects that I made today. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed making them, as I always do, or why would I do this? If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please take a moment to do that now. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in any of the product that I used today, check that description box below. And until next time, here are a couple more videos I thought you might enjoy. Bye-bye.